Hey guys, it's Luke. So I just wanted to I want to go over this uh, article that came out recently from Alex Hutchinson, who has done some great stuff. Always has good stuff out there, and some great books out there. So like Endure is a really good one if you want to dive deep into some things. But in any case, he's writing about drafting, which is we talk about it a little bit, but I don't think. I think sometimes we think that it's just more like on the elite side. And in any case, I just wanted to show you what they're saying for for everybody, really. Um, so it really talks, controversial research. He did a lot of this stuff with Kipchoge's sub 2 hour attempts, and if you read through there, it's basically saying that it showed a big number um, of time that he would save if he was drafting perfectly. He's saying it sounds a little too good to be true, but there is definitely some amount of time that you're going to save. I think they were saying like it was like 6 minutes or so for Kipchoge in a perfect drafting situation. Um, and so now they showed some newer research that shows that yes, you definitely do get some benefit from drafting. And you can kind of see here that's kind of the setup they had when they were testing it. But just kind of wanted to go what they showed. Main result: bigger drag forces make you burn more energy. The question is by how much across three testing speeds between 8 and 6 minutes per mile. They found that energy consumption increased by about 6% for every 1% of body weight in the force pulling them backwards. Right, so um, the more you weren't uh, in a drafting position, the more energy you were burning to maintain that pace. So for them, Kipchoge weighing 115 pounds, running a 2 hour marathon pace with no pacers, the drag force is 1.39% of his body weight, which means he's burning 7.8% more energy than he would with absolutely perfect drafting. Plug in that number to Kip's equations, and you find that the perfect drafting would save him 6:28 over the course of the marathon. That's incredible. For women's world record holder, Bridget Kosgei is running a slightly slower pace of savings is still almost 6 minutes. The first thing we know, a single subject study a half century ago, which produced those seemingly improbable predictions of 6 minute savings, turns out to be pretty much right on the money. So that's pretty good. That's backed up from, so what they just did backed up what was found, 50 years ago. The average energy cost in the new study was 6%, but the range among 12 subjects was 4.2 to 8.1%. So, in other words, some subjects may pay twice as much as others for running again into the wind, consequently benefiting roughly twice as much from drafting. That's a big finding. And a lot of that, I think, is determined on body size, things like that. Um, let's see what else I wanted to talk about here. So it's pretty interesting. So it's basically if you're drafting well, that's energy equivalent of giving yourself a pair of imaginary super shoes, which is an interesting take on it. I think I like this too. So in reality, drafting isn't perfect. The only way Kipchoge would gain 628 would be if you were to run in a vacuum, which would eliminate 100% of the drag force competition. Blah blah blah. But um, yeah, so basically, there's some other stuff you can look into yourself, but. Uh, so still numbers are big enough that even imperfect drafting seems like a worthwhile endeavor, not just for the likes of Eliud Kipchoge or Bridget Kosgei. That's truth affects. So here's what I want to say. According to Silva's calculations, a typical 5'9", 145 mid-packer drafting behind the simplest three-person formation. So basically be person up front, person just off the left shoulder, person just off the right shoulder, and you would be in that kind of that little pocket there. Would save over 3 minutes of the course of a 3 hour marathon, roughly 3 minutes over a 4 hour marathon, and 3 minutes for a 5 hour marathon. So basically from 3 to 5 hours, you're saving 3 minutes in the marathon. And that's pretty darn good. And so even Kipchoge and Kosgei's savings at 342 and 325 respectively are in the same ballpark despite huge differences in speed. And so he's saying, in all honesty, these numbers are still so big that they're hard to believe, but the evidence is now much stronger. So, but I guess my point would be, it's even if it's smaller than that, it's still significant, right? So even if it's 3 minutes for the vast majority of people running a marathon, that's about 7 seconds per mile, right? So it's a huge savings. And so what I want to say, really kind of go over with you real quick, was what the implications of that are. And there's a couple ways to look at that. So if you're training alone right now and you're in the big tempo runs and things like that, and you're questioning yourself, then I would say, this should give you some confidence, right? So like if you're in a group of people and you're just tucked in a little bit, it's going to make it feel much, much more comfortable. 7 seconds per mile is pretty significant at any level. And if you're in that kind of that bubble there, it's definitely going to make that pace feel much easier on race day. So you couple that with the super shoes, with a proper taper, all that good stuff. All of a sudden, marathon pace seems much more doable for a much longer period of time, right? And so hopefully that should give you some confidence. I do think it's one of the reasons to be in a pace group. Although if you've listened to anything I've said in the past, it's like it can be pretty hit or miss with pace groups. But I think, if you have enough people in there and you're tucked in the back and you kind of let the front people do what they're going to do and you maintain with some people around you, and it doesn't have to be very many. We know it could be 3 or 4 people around you, and you can get massive benefits from the pace group. And if you're the person in front, just make sure people are doing their fair share of the work. And if you're in the back, feel free to chip in a little bit. That was always, I know there's no rules on that, but I think there's just some good faith things there. But yeah, so the second thing, I think, if a pace group is, like I said, if a pace group is slightly faster than you want them to be, it still might be worth it. So, like, say if you were trying to run 7:48 per mile, let's just say that was your Boston qualifying pace that you needed, and there was a group running, 7:45s or even 7:40s, it might make sense for you to kind of feel that out in the race. And if there's enough people and that kind of stretches out where you're just kind of, drifting pretty close, plus or minus a few seconds either way, and it's just kind of averaging a little bit fast, it might make more sense to stay in that group. Or if a couple of you break off and then kind of, for the first part, and then maybe a few of you break off towards, the middle part of the race and then are doing your own thing, it might make more sense to do that than try to just say, well, I'm just going to go alone and then I'll just see what happens, right? So if you don't, basically what I'm saying is you don't necessarily want to get caught in no man's land, right? It's going to cost you more energy to run at your pace that you wanted to run if you're all by yourself than it would be to maybe stay on the back end of a pace group that's maybe just a couple seconds too fast per mile for what you ideally wanted to run, right? And the flip side of that might be true. So say if you wanted to be 7:45 per mile, but the pace group was at 7:50 per mile, you don't want that 7:45 to put you by yourself, right? You'd rather be at 7:50, saving that energy with the pace group. And then when you make the move, maybe you can make the move to another group, and you can, you kind of leapfrog group to group. You leapfrog from your current pace group, and then maybe there's some people that kind of took off and are on their own now, and a little bit ahead of them. Maybe you cross the bridge, get to that group, and then you use that group for a little while, and then cross the bridge to another group, right? So you never want to be in an extended period of time really by yourself or with just one other person. If there's an opportunity to maybe pick up the pace and go into the next group, but then it's going to, maybe you spend a couple miles picking up the pace, but once you get in that group, you settle into a pace that's pretty close to what you wanted to run. You're better off doing that than just trying to go alone your whole way. Like, so you really got to use some judgment there. If they're way too fast, obviously let them go. But if they're a couple of seconds faster than you wanted, it might make more sense to stick into that group. And that's really what my point of that I wanted to be. And then lastly, just don't try to be a hero and lead the group, right? Like if you are in a pace group, you don't have to be right up front, right? Like let other people be up front. It's okay. I know sometimes you want to be the workhorse, but you don't want it to ruin your race too, right? So just think about how much more energy that's costing you to be up front. So just be mindful of those things. And you get to a point, especially like if you're trying to Boston qualify or something like that, all of a sudden, like all those little details in your race are going to end up playing a big role in whether you're successful or not, right? And so just think about that, how much that can save you. Think about that when you're creating a race strategy and you're looking at different pace groups and things like that. And you can really set that up to make sure that you're close enough to being in a group, and then ideally where you can bridge gaps to other groups. And if it's only like, and then I guess last, I'll just wrap up with this. Like, say you're in a pace group that's running a little bit slower than you wanted to, and then you get to a point, say you get past halfway, and you're like, okay, now I'm going to start bridging the gap. And so maybe maybe 10, 15 seconds ahead of them is a couple people, and it's not really enough to really benefit from drafting standpoint, but you have that, and then you have another group of past that. Still use that couple people for your benefit, right? Leapfrog over to them, and then maybe they're just waiting for somebody to kind of have a kick in the pants too, and they're going to go after that group. And if not, you still cut that distance to that group that you really want to be in, and either whether they work with you or not, now you've made that into a much more manageable thing, and you can use that. And if you're patient in the first half, over the course of that second half, you can really do a lot of passing, which is going to be good mentally. If you're the one doing the passing, it kind of feeds on itself, right? And you just build that confidence every time you're doing that, and it can really propel you over the second half of the race, really keep your mind into it, really keep you sharp and in that competitive spirit. Whereas if you were the person that kind of went out by themselves and now everybody's kind of catching back up to them, most of us know how defeating that is, right? Like all of a sudden one person passes us, and then two people pass us, and then it's 15 people pass us. That is so more devastating to a person. And then you just kind of start shutting down, and you kind of lose that competitive instinct, right? You kind of go on the mode of just kind of more protecting yourself and just trying to hold on to ground. And it's like watching a basketball game or something like that, where a team's way up, and then all of a sudden they're playing defensive a game style and just kind of trying to hold them off. And a lot of times a team can come back with that because they're on the attack, right? So you would much rather be the person on the attack over the second half of the race, and a much better situation to be in. But in any case, I thought that this was interesting. I thought it put into context how important drafting can be for everyone. And I think, when you talk about how, if you're willing to strap on a pair of super shoes and gain a few minutes there, then there's other things along the race where all these things, you start putting these things together. Like I get a minute here, I get 3 minutes there. All of a sudden you found a way to pick up 4, 5, 6 minutes on a race day, and really give yourself a much better chance to reach those goals. So I thought it was interesting. You obviously can read the whole article here. Just follow Alex Hutchinson on a social. I think no, maybe not. But they got his Facebook and Twitter and everything there. So you can follow those and find that article. But thought it was pretty interesting, and there was some things you could all take away from it. So, all right, till next time, I will talk to you later.